It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the sports owner with SportsWayWithDraayDay. How are you doing today?
I'm okay, man. I'm okay maintaining under these conditions, but making the best out of it.
That's good. Can you talk about how you got started in your sports podcast?
Well, August of this year just made 2 years of me starting it, and how I came about with it was for years people have been telling me that yo D, you need to start your own show. Like you need to do your own podcast or something. Like you heavy into the sport so much. You need to get into it. You need to get into it. But I was always procrastinating with it. And it took for some, drastic stuff to go on, whether it was in the personal front or just life in general, where I had a conversation with my mother and she was just asking me like, what was the one thing that you could do that'd get your mind off of whatever it is that you're stressing about? And I was like, sports. She was like, well, you've been talking about having your own show for a while. You need to start thinking about doing it. So I went on YouTube, did my research on how to start my own podcast, and the rest became history. So that's pretty much how I started.
That's cool. What do you cover in your podcast?
I kind of pretty much cover NBA. I'll do a little college here and there. Major League Baseball I cover, NFL I cover. I do WNBA because I feel like the girls need, no more notoriety because it ain't that many sports shows out there that actually speak about them, except for probably about 3 or 4 that I can think of. I do tennis here and there. I touch on pretty much everything here and there.
How did you know that you wanted to cover, like, for example, the NBA, NFL, and the women's NBA?
Oh, because I've been a fan since I was a kid. Like I'll be 35 in November, so pretty much I've been a fan of these leagues for years. So I already knew right off the rip. Once if I was to start my own podcast, those was definitely fields that I was definitely going to touch on. Like it wasn't no ifs, ands, or buts. Like I was definitely going, speak on those because for me it's like having a conversation with my boys that I grew up with. It just so happens that on my podcast I'm doing it dolo. I might have my little guest on here and there, but for the most part, I'm basically having a conversation with myself and then sharing it with everybody.
Who are some of the people that you've interviewed before?
Well, it's basically local people. It hasn't been, it hasn't been no marquee person or a big time person. Like I might have had, a couple of my people that I've networked with, from podcasts, and I might have had them on the show, and we'll talk about football or baseball or whatever it is. But I haven't had no big marquee person on there. God willing, that happens down the pipeline. But right now I've just basically been having guests like local podcasters or just podcasters from other parts of the country. That's the beauty of doing this podcast, and I've been able to network with people from Tampa, LA, Tennessee, Oklahoma. So I've been able to network with so many people.
That's so amazing. Have you interviewed any coaches before, like college coaches?
No, I haven't been able to do that yet, but that's coming. That's coming down the pipeline. I've been I know a couple of youth basketball coaches in my city that I've been able to speak to on a regular, that hopefully when this pandemic thing dies down a little bit, I can get them on. But for the most part, I haven't been able to get no college coaches or high school coaches on the show yet.
What are some of your future plans for your podcast?
Well, one of my plans I've pretty much got taken care of already. I think what are we in August, July? I wanted to, get some merch out there, supporting the podcast, which I was able to do. I had sold T-shirts and I sold wristbands. The next goal is to start my website. That's the next thing. So, hopefully in the fall, I can get that launched. I can get that launched, and pretty much those are the two goals. The next goal is pretty much in motion right now, and that's just staying consistent. It's a lot of people out there that they look forward to my episodes. They always ask me when something's gonna drop. So that right there just tells me there's people out there that actually like what I do. So it's just just staying consistent with it. That's pretty much it.
Can you talk about
slow motion but in motion? That's the motto.
Can you talk about some of the items that you sell, like your merchandise that you sell for your podcast?
Well, I was selling T-shirts, but they're sold out now. I was surprised at how many people actually reached out. I was way more surprised. I didn't think that many people would reach out. And I also had wristbands, repping the podcast. So hopefully soon, I can get more of that stuff out. But I think I did it. I think I started selling them in the beginning of July. We're now in September. So pretty much everything is sold out now. So hopefully, next month, I can restock and get some more stuff out there for the people.
What advice would you give upcoming future podcasts that look to sports talk podcasts that are getting into the profession?
If it's your passion, go for it. If it's your passion, go for it. Don't let nobody tell you can't do it. Because that was my issue was. My issue wasn't the fact that people was telling me not to do it. My issue was I was afraid to fail. That was my whole thing. But eventually you got to take some chances. And with me, I wound up taking my chance, and I haven't failed at it yet. I mean, I've had to take a little break here and there because obviously in life you go through stuff where you got to take a sabbatical and step away for a little bit. But I've been able to come back like I never left. So for the people out there that's into podcasting and is thinking about doing something, just go for it. Just be consistent with it. You gotta have personality. You gotta have charisma. Like nobody wants to hear somebody that's boring. You gotta be able to entertain. You gotta be able to entertain people. That's the only way it's gonna work. You gotta know what you're talking about, and you gotta be passionate about it. If you got those two things, it's easy peasy.
Where can my listeners find you at on your podcast on social media?
On Facebook, DraayDay, ERAY space DAY. Instagram, DraayDay1985, or my podcast page, SportsWayWithDraayDay podcast. Twitter, DraayDay1985. And as far as my podcast, where it's streaming on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Anchor. There's a couple of places that the podcast is streaming on. I got so many of them, so sorry for going along with all of them. But yeah, I'm streaming on a couple of them.
Thank you again for your interview, and best of luck with your podcast, Sports with DraayDay. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at @talk_Brandon, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, DraayDay, for your interview, and best of luck.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.